Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your Ruben Amorim press conference reaction for the Manchester derby, Manchester City against Manchester United. Ruben Amorim frustrated with his substitutes, the players that came off against Victoria Plzen. We'll talk about that. So it's Rashford, it's Xerxes. He was also asked about Onana. Many of you spoke about Onana on the morning show and said, why is Onana not getting spoken about? You know, we're talking about leaks, we're talking about people falling out on the pitch. Why are people not talking about Onana? Well, Amorim was asked a direct question about that as well, and he spoke about his frustration with players not delivering in the first half of that game, and we'll talk about that as well. So lots to get into ahead of what is a massive game for Manchester United. It's busy. It's busy at the moment, isn't it? Whether you're preparing for Christmas or not, football relation, it's very, very busy. He was asked, is it a good time to be playing Man City? Obviously, they're not playing very well at the moment. He said, I never think about these things. We will face a great opponent and I'm focused on our problems. So we have a lot of issues here. So I'm more focused on what we should do on Sunday to win the game. And I'm really focused on my team. I think that's a really good answer to the question, because I think that when you look at, he was asked about whether Man United are facing a different, weaker Man City. And he said, no. The great teams can respond in any moment. And I think they're in a better place than us in type of understanding for the game, the way they play, the confidence they have. Even in these kind of moments, we have a lot to focus on in our team. Our focus is totally, of course, we have to have a strategy to try to win the game with the strategy like it should be, but we are focused just on our team. I think this is really important that that gets put out there, because I think Man City win this game. Obviously, we've got the preview coming up later, but this whole, is it a good time to play Man City? Is it a weak Man City? It completely detracts and distracts from us. And Amorim is right to bring the focus back onto us. Whatever Man City's problems are, and they have got problems, are they worse than Man United's problems? Absolutely not. We got beaten by Nottingham Forest at home. They beat Forest 3-0, even in their big bad patch at the moment. And they are in a bad patch. I mean, they've just lost to Juventus. They drew with Feyenoord. They've lost to Bournemouth. They've had some bad results, but they beat Forest comfortably 3-0 at home. We got beat 3-2. So straight away, just on that, you can take evidence that Man City are a better team than us. And they are a better team than us. They are struggling, but they are a better team with us. They've been together longer than us. They've got a manager that's got a system that's implemented longer than us. They are the favourites in this game. And I do not want us to get distracted from that by a media or people in our fan base that are going, Man City are shit, we're going to beat them. Because where's the evidence that we're playing well? If we were Man United going there in good form, like, you know, if you're Liverpool or whatever, it's a good time to play Man City. But the question is it a good time to play Man City? Well, of course it is, because they're not as good as they have been. But the question should be, who's better at the moment? And I still think Man City are a better team than where we are at the moment. And you can't say that's not the case when you've watched us perform in the last two games. How do you make this team run? Amorim was asked about. And I think this is where I want to bring in about his frustrations. He was asked about the substitutes and taking people off last night and, not being happy. And he said, look, I'm always frustrated. I think I'm going to be like that for a while, so it's normal for me. You want to see better things, but then you remember that we did not have much time to work on this kind of play in training. We clearly had a lack of pace during the first half against Plzen. We were controlling the game, but without many chances because we lacked runs to push the opponent back. They left us sometimes 1-against-1 in front. With our players, we have to be so much better and so much more desired in this. So that's it. I'm always frustrated because I want to see more, like all of us. That's why they are fighting at the end of the game. And I think that's a obvious, I mean, it's not even speculation again, is it? It's very obvious that he wasn't happy with the movement from the front three. He wasn't happy that we weren't pushing their defence back. And when he brought Rasmus and Mount and Anthony and Garnacho on, that changed. So therefore it reflects on those players. Ahmad was on in the first half, but Ahmad stayed on. And then when we made the changes, Ahmad became a much better player. So you've got to look at Xerxes and Rashford. And yes, Amorim is frustrated. And what he's basically saying is they're not running enough, they're not involved enough, they're not up for it enough, the desire's not there. This is not just about Marcus Rashford. It has to be about Xerxes as well. It's how you balance that. But clearly, they've had chances. They scored 2 goals each against Everton, but they've had their chances and they've not taken them. I think that they're not out, but I'd be stunned if they started on Sunday. And also, if he uses them from the bench, they've got to look at the performances of Rasmus and Mount from the bench, and they've got to replicate that. So I mean, it's like taking a horse to water. You can't make them drink. And I think that is the problem that Amorim has with some of these players. He's not actually reinventing the wheel. He's not giving out difficult instructions. He's just asking them to run more, and they're not doing it. So he was asked, how do you make this team run more? And he says, it's transitions. So tell them to run and which kind of positions they must have when the ball's in our box. We tried to make sure there are targets during training and during games. We try to push them to press, and if they don't have time to train, they can play in 3 games, so they can prove with that. It's about putting some small targets, some marks on the pitch, telling players where players should be when the ball is near our box. I mean, this is what I mean. It's very simple, isn't it? Targets, putting markers on the pitch. I mean, it's Janet and John stuff. It's ABC, isn't it? It's really basic. And some of them targets, I don't know what they are, but they could be, Ahmad ran this much in an hour, you ran this much. And those sort of things are, I mean, look, footballers have got things in their boots, they wear things on their chest. We don't even have access to this information. I think it's really difficult to get hold of distance covered. It occasionally comes out in information every now and again, but you can find out how many passes a player's played, how many shots, etc. But distance covered is very important, and the clubs have access to that, and they tend to they gatekeep it quite well. But those are sort of things that, I mean, you can't. You could figure it out, but you can figure it out on an eye test as well, can't you? And I think that there's no excuse, is there? Like, if you're Cristiano Ronaldo and you're not running around as much as some average winger, you go, well, it's Cristiano Ronaldo, he's just scored a hat-trick. But in the United system that Amorim wants to implement, you can look at a player like Rashford, and you can look at a player like Xerxes, and you can look at a player like Amorim, and you can say you all played for an hour, and Ahmad ran 20% more distance than you. That's not acceptable, because you're playing in the same team in the same area. Now, maybe Xerxes as the player who's up front, you might not have to cover as much ground, but there are ways that you can measure this sort of stuff. And when it's getting so granular that you're saying this is where he needs you to stand as well, the excuses aren't really there. It's this again, isn't it? I feel like I've nicked this from Rashford, and I feel bad about it, but I think we need to nick it until he nicks it back. And the only way he can nick it back is by scoring loads of goals. So we're going to nick it. It's about IQ. It's about IQ. If a manager is saying you need to be studying these positions and you need to run this much, and they're still not doing it, that's that. That's like any element of teaching, isn't it? If you are running a restaurant as a chef and you get an apprentice in and you teach them how to chop up a carrot, and 2 weeks later they're still getting it wrong, then you get someone else in who masters it in an hour, you know who you're going to keep. And this is what we're talking about. And I think some people don't understand it. Not every footballer is the same. Not every footballer's got the same football IQ. And I think we're struggling with that a little bit at the moment. He says, he was asked, do you feel improvement? He says, I think they are improving. And if you see the transitions, you can see that we are improving on the speed at which we move. Sometimes we cannot do it, but we are training, and I can feel it in the team. I actually agree with this. I think in the last half an hour last night, I remember the Sporting game against Man City and how they transitioned quickly from back to front and created spaces. And of course, that happens when you're winning and a team is trying to score, like Pelsen were and City were against Sporting. But we did break at pace. We messed it up. So did Sporting on a couple of occasions in that game, but they were much better than us. We're going to have to learn that. You know, it's that Ahmad to Rasmus pass. It's the Rasmus to Garnacho pass. It's the Ahmad to Bruno instead of Rashford pass in the first half. It's decision-making, but we are getting better at it. And I will acknowledge and speak about improvements, even if they are small improvements. And I agree with Amorim that we are seeing better transitions from Man United. We're creating different types of chances as well. I think traditionally, over the last 3 years, it's that cut inside and shoot, and we are still seeing it. But it's not the chances that I'm seeing, like the goals that Rasmus has been scoring specifically are very different, because he wasn't getting the service. But we're getting chances now. You know, you look at the 2 ones that Mount had. You look at the second goal that Rashford scored when Ahmad slipped him in against Everton. We weren't scoring those sort of goals, and they're transition goals. They are, you know, direct at a defence that's stepping backwards, diagonal runs, one-on-ones, and, you know, goal chances you should be scoring. They're not, and that's good. That is improvement. This was quite a big question. He was asked did you ever talk about the City job with Hugo Viana, who has gone from Sporting to Man City? He said, never heard from them, and this was my only option. When Man United talked to me, I had no doubts. I already had something in my mind that the United job could be a possibility. With Man City or Viana, nothing about that. Look, we have to take that on face value. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by that. I personally think, and I know a lot of people share this, Hugo Viana goes from Sporting Lisbon to Manchester City. And Pep Guardiola is leaving at the end of this season. Manchester United take Ruben Amorim. Pep Guardiola signs a new contract. Hugo Viana is at Man City. I just think that when you look at Begiristain, he went in a few months before Pep, and then Pep came in. Viana goes in a few months before Amorim, and then Amorim comes in. I think that, sometimes football is formulaic and it is following patterns, and I think that pattern was going to be replicated, but obviously we stepped in and we did the deal first. It's logical that Amorim would say he was never approached by Man City, because I think if he'd been approached by Man City, he'd be taking the job in the summer. So I don't think he has been approached by Man City, but I think that's where he was probably going to be going if Man United hadn't done anything, and Pep would have gone in the summer. So that's always been my interpretation of it. But I'm not going to question the fact, and it makes sense, that he wasn't approached by Man City because Man City weren't in a position to do that. But I think that's where they were going. Are you looking forward to the derby? He said, I'm going to talk about Onana. He asked about Onana. He was asked about Onana. We'll talk about that. He said, are you looking forward to the derby? He said, I'm really focused on the details. I just want to improve the team, so I cannot treat it like a normal derby. It should be two great teams fighting for the title, and it isn't at the moment. So it's just one more game with a very good opponent. Both teams are struggling in the moment, so I hope in the future I can feel that real feeling of derby that has title implications. But my goal now is to improve the team and win games, and we'll try and win this game. I think that's about expectations. I think that's about being real. And this is why I like Amorim, because it's like, this is a Manchester derby. This is a massive game, but we have to be real. We're going into this game with very little improvement, very little work. We're miles off from where we need to be. So I think what he's not being negative. I think what he's basically saying is, let me just, what he's saying is that if we beat Man City on Sunday, or we get a positive result, a draw, whatever, it won't be because we're ready. So it's not like he's going into the game saying we're going to lose. I think what he's saying and acknowledging and being real about is that we're not ready for this to be a massive game for us yet. It's not like we're going into this game like, yeah, this is massive. It is a massive game, but we're a long way from where we need to be. It's that whole development curve, isn't it? Like, it's that whole realism. Like, of course it's a big game. Of course we want to win, and we've got to set up to try and win the game, but we're not where we need to be going into these games where we want to be. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. So, and as he says, like, his goal at the moment is to improve his team. And, some people would say, well, you're always trying to improve your team. Of course you are, but if you're on a slot and you're top of the league and things are going really well and everyone's playing the way you want them to play, of course you can improve, but everything, a lot of things are going well. If you're Arteta, like, of course you want to improve your team, maybe add a couple of players, get play a little bit better, but they're not building anything. Like, the structure's there, the way they want to play is there, and that's what Amorim's saying, is like, we're not a complete team yet. We're not anywhere near where he wants to be. Any concerns about Onana? This was the big thing, because for some reason Onana has gone from being one of our best performers this season to being absolutely terrible the last two games. And I mean terrible. He deserves the plaudits. He deserves the praise. I mean, I did that video. I'm going to watch it back later because I only did it 3 months ago, and I expressed concerns about Onana. And pretty much from doing that video, he started playing really, really well. So I wanted to go and watch the video again just to go back over the concerns, which I remember a lot of them, but I just want to give it a watch. But he does deserve criticism. Like, the goal last night that we conceded was just shocking. And also the Forest game. I mean, you could argue we shouldn't have lost that game based on the mistakes that Onana made. So any concerns about Onana, Amorim was asked. He said, you have to take it like it is. He has already in the past had a past situation like this, and we've got to work on this. If you see the play, we're trying to build up a lot with goalkeeper making the bounce pass with De Ligt. This time we have a disconnect a little bit during the play, and then when we try this, we suffer a goal. A difficult goal for us in the end of the second half. But we managed today, not like against Nottingham, we managed to help Onana like he did in the past for us. So, look, I mean, I don't think he's making a drama out of it. I still think that I would have a watching brief on Onana. I said this with Ten Hag. Onana coming in for De Gea didn't need to happen. I don't think it needed to happen. Some of you did. I don't think it needed to happen. I think it was an expensive mistake because we could have kept De Gea, who's a better shot stopper, and that £50 million could have been used elsewhere. But we did it. And I said when we did it, if we get rid of Ten Hag, Onana was very much Ten Hag's goalkeeper. He, went out on a limb to get him. Onana might not be the goalkeeper for another manager because Onana is quite distinctive. He is a goalkeeper that's got a mistake in him. He's a personality. Ten Hag obviously loved him. It doesn't mean that another manager's going to. Now, the early signs under Amorim is I think he does like Onana. And, I don't know whether it's an upgrade area, but it's worth keeping an eye on. But I think that listening to what Amorim had to say about Onana, I think he's putting it down to goalkeepers make mistakes. And the mistake against Pilsen was as a result of trying to do what we want to do. Lots of teams concede goals from playing out from the back. It frustrates the shit out of me. I don't even like... I think there's an over obsession with playing out from the back, and so many goals across the Premier League, and again this weekend, will be conceded from people playing out from the back. It's almost become a way for people to score goals. So I think he's putting it down to that. And the Forest game, I think he's putting it down to individual error. So as long as Onana doesn't do it again on Sunday, I don't think there's anything to be worried about. I think he's basically just, brushing it off as these things happen. He's made some big saves in the past, so it balances itself out. We just got to see with Onana how quickly he bounces back from this. And I think, look, I just on that, I don't want to brush it under the carpet. What are your thoughts about Onana long term? Get in the comments. Ideally, I don't want to see us replacing Onana. That, to me, is money that needs to be spent elsewhere. A goalkeeper, for me, is very, very important. But when you spend money on a goalkeeper, I never like it. Because I'm like, a goalkeeper's a goalkeeper, isn't it? I don't want to be offensive to goalkeepers, but a goalkeeper isn't going to score as goals. They're not going to create goals. They save goals. But there's just something a bit... It's never as glamorous for me spending money on a goalkeeper as it is an outfield player. So I would rather... And also, if we did have to replace Onana, who's going to give us 50 million only 18 months down the line? So I think it's better for everybody if Onana is our goalkeeper for the next 2 years and we don't have to spend in that area. What would be good is to bring a proper, young, understudy goalkeeper in. Now, I liked Verbruggen a couple of years ago, and I thought we were going to bring him in, but he went to Brighton. I think we should be looking for something like that. That's my goalkeeper solution. Bring in a young goalkeeper for about £10 million who instantaneously could challenge Onana and win that place off him. But ideally, I don't want to spend any money on a goalkeeper. But that doesn't mean we won't have to. Onana has to rediscover very quickly the previous 3 months. He can't falter like he did last season. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But there are concerns about his game. I still stand by it, but he has been a lot better this season. And hopefully this is just a little blip and he can have a worldie on Sunday against Man City. I am going to be doing the preview a little bit later for the Man City game, so I don't want to get into that too much. But I do think that it's going to be a fascinating game. And I think listening to what Amorim had to say, I certainly think he's sort of not underplaying this game and its significance, but also putting it out to us that our problems are bigger than Man City's. As much as Man City have problems, they've won four Premier League titles in a row. As much as they have problems, they're in the top 4. We are in 13th place. There is this media and sections of our fan base theory that we're almost favourites for this game. And you need to deep it down and go, hold on a minute. Man City are doing very badly. Oh, they lost to Juventus. Yeah, in the Champions League. We've just struggled in Czech Republic against Victoria Pilsen in the Europa League. So as much as Man City are struggling, they're high-end problems, whereas ours are a lot lower. So I'm not going to give any spoilers up. I think Man City are favourites on Sunday, and we might be the perfect team for them to play, to be honest. So yeah, we'll have to see how it works out. But interesting stuff from Amorim, and I think the things I take from it are the frustrations. I think that we would still be going into this game as underdogs anyway. But how difficult for a manager is it when you've only got 70% of your team actually doing the things you want, and being frustrated with players that aren't doing what you're asking must be so frustrating, because he's literally giving people a chance and they're not delivering. And that, you know, you can't polish a turd. And this is the first month of being a manager. So you must be like having chats with people like Barada and Wilcox and saying, look, I've only been here a month, and this player haven't done really anything in that month. And you're asking me to get a tune out of them, and they're not even doing it in the first month. Like, where you'd think they're doing it on adrenaline and excitement. How is this going to get better in the harder months that come when I'm not a shiny new toy? And that's why he needs this, as we said this morning, to clear out. Anyway, get your comments in below. Lots for you to have your say on there. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And we've got the preview coming up later on tonight as well. Take care, everyone. Speak to you all in a bit. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and stay safe.